Welcome to A Dram of Outlander. This is Desiree, your podcaster and the writer for adramofoutlander.com. For all things Outlander, from the Diana Gabaldon book series to the Stars TV series and everything in between. This is podcast episode 129, and we're in week 15 of the Drums of Autumn read-along. Hello! It's so fantastic to be doing another week. These are some excellent chapters. Are you recovered yet from Willie falling into the privy? It is one of my most favorite scenes. Poor young Ian, coming out of his skin. This week we are covering chapters 26 and 27, and I'm calling it Plagued. And the summary goes something like this. Claire treats the ill man. John and Jamie play chess into the night. Claire is disturbed. Her feelings and thoughts run amok. She's jealous, but of what? There's an omen in the night. The sick man prepares to die. Claire performs the ritual. What will they do with the body? John takes ill. To keep William safe, Jamie takes him on a road trip. The journey is bittersweet and filled with the language of the heart. As a reminder, in the written portion, which is basically my script instead of the actual show notes, there are links embedded of things of interest. So I encourage you, no matter how you listen to the podcast, that you go back to the website, adramofoutlander.com, and read the post and click on the points of interest. Or if you're an Apple Podcast through iTunes or another format of listening, a different streaming service, then you should also be able to see the show notes and click on them. But I'm not wholly certain. I have not checked every single one of them. Inside the chapters, chapter 26. Who? Claire, the Tuscarora man, Jamie, John, William, and young Ian. What? Measles, Claire's doctoring, and jealousy. Where? Fraser's Ridge, North Carolina. Plague and pestilence. Claire attends to the ill Tuscarora man. He's stable, but no better. He holds the amulet she left him and wants her to sing to him. She obliges and sings Onward, Christian Soldiers 3 times to his satisfaction. Concerned about spreading the disease, Claire pauses to rinse her hands with alcohol. She recalls Lord John mentioning a small outbreak in Cross Creek. There was talk of an outbreak of the red measles in Cross Creek, Lord John remarked upon my reporting to Jamie the condition of our guest. Is it true, Mrs. Fraser, that the savage is congenitally less able to withstand infection than our Europeans, while African slaves are yet more hardy than their masters? Depends on the infection, I said, peering into the cauldron and giving the stew bottle a cautious poke. The Indians are a lot more resistant to the parasitic diseases, malaria say, caused by organisms here, and the Africans deal better with things like dengue fever, which came with them from Africa, after all. But the Indians haven't much resistance to European plagues like smallpox and syphilis, no. Lord John is surprised by Claire's knowledge. He asks if she subscribes to the miasma theory. She doesn't and changes the subject. At the end of each chapter, I will include a little bit of science knowledge if there's something to pick up, and I will talk about miasma theory there. The evening wore on pleasantly with conversation and the boys playing chess. Young Ian and William retired to the herb shed to sleep. Claire ponders bedtime and the issue of Lord John. 2 down, I thought, keeping my eyes resolutely away from the bed, and 3 to go. In the event the delicate problem of bedtime was solved by my retiring, cloaked in modesty, or at least in my nightgown, while Jamie and Lord John took over the chess table, drinking the last of the brandy by firelight. Jamie and John play a lengthy game of chess. Claire notes John is a far better player than she is. John remarks on living in the backcountry. John makes a final chess move that wins the game. Jamie fills John's empty cup with the raw whiskey he's been making. John is astonished by Jamie having 12 barrels of it. It will take 10 years before it's truly palatable. What's Jamie planning to do with it? Assuming that you don't mean to clean your boots with it, may I ask what you intend doing with 12 barrels of this? Jamie laughed. Trade it. Sell it when I can. Customs tax and a license to brew spirits being one of the petty political concerns with which I'm not afflicted, owing to our remoteness, he added ironically. Lord John grunted, tried another sip, and set the cup down. Well, you may well escape the customs, I'll grant you. The nearest agent is in Cross Creek, but I cannot say I think it is a safe practice on that account. To whom, may I ask, are you selling this remarkable concoction? Not to the savages, I trust? Oh, Lord John. Jamie knows the Indians cannot handle alcohol well, so he's only giving it to them in small amounts. And John brings up the Regulators and Jamie's presence as a means to quell lawlessness. I have heard talk in Wilmington of any unruly group of men called Regulators, who terrorize the backcountry and cause disruption by means of riot. Have you encountered anything such nature here? I think it will be some time before there is such lawlessness for me to quell, though I did go so far as to knock down an old German farmer who was abusing a young woman at the grain mill on the river. He had it in mind she had given him short weight, which she had not, and I could not convince him otherwise, but that is my only attempt so far at maintaining public order. John is relieved to hear this, and they go on to play another game. Claire isn't able to sleep as she lay awake, disturbed by the conversation. She knows she's safe in this house that Jamie built, but her jealousy is getting the best of her. She is trying to parse out the why in her jealousy. I was indeed jealous, an emotion I hadn't felt for some years, and was appalled to feel now. I rolled onto my back and closed my eyes, trying to shut out the murmur of conversation. Lord John had been nothing but courtesy itself to me. More than that, he had been intelligent, thoughtful, thoroughly charming, in fact. And listening to him making intelligent, thoughtful, charming conversation with Jamie knotted my insides. It made me clench my hands under the cover of the quilt. You are an idiot, I told myself savagely. What is the matter with you? I tried to relax, breathing deeply through my nose, eyes closed. She knows part of it is the presence of William, Jamie's second-born, who looks so much like Brianna. She, the child Jamie would never see. And why? Why had John brought him here? Claire's brain is running at full speed trying to figure it out. It is a risky move bringing the boy to Fraser's Ridge. He resembled Jamie so much that even young Ian had noticed. Claire peeks at the chess play in progress. She describes John's fair and attractive looks, his feelings locked down tight with no evidence of his feelings for Jamie. But Claire knows all too well what John feels for her husband. She also knows Jamie's feelings. On the other hand, I wasn't in any doubt about Jamie's feelings in that regard either. The knot under my heart eased a bit, and I took a deeper breath. No matter how late they sat up over the board, drinking and talking, it would be my bed Jamie came to. Now Claire gets to the bottom of her emotional spiral. Frank and his actions were there. Even though Claire had no right, she was jealous of Frank's affairs. She would demand he sleep with her after some of the late nights he spent out. Frank didn't have a consistent lover, and there were long gaps between women sometimes. Sometimes it would be months, even a year or more, between episodes, and we would live in peace together. But then it would happen again. The silent phone calls, the 2 excused absences, the late nights. Never anything so overt as another woman's perfume or lipstick on his collar. He had discretion. But I always felt the ghost of the other woman, whoever she was, some faceless, indistinguishable she. It bothered Claire his attentions weren't for her, even though she didn't want the attention. She still wanted Jamie, right? And called out for him in her sleep. She wasn't available to Frank, but that didn't stop her from feeling the pangs of jealousy and not being wanted. Claire finally falls asleep after hearing comforting words from Jamie's mouth. "Do you feel yourself content?" Lord John asked suddenly. Jamie paused for a moment. "I have all that a man could want. A place and honourable work, my wife at my side, the knowledge that my son is safe and well cared for." He then looked up at Grey. "And a good friend." He reached over, clasped Lord John's hands, and let it go. "I want no more." Claire has insecurities like every woman. She rebuffed Frank and seemingly betted him out of jealousy and anger. Could it have been loneliness? To his credit, Frank was private about his philandering. I think he loved Claire until the end. I also think some of the late nights were part of ongoing intelligence work and his research. In the morning, Claire's patient is preparing to die. An owl was heard in the night. It's a sign or omen of death. Young Ian explains the death ritual of the tribe. "Sing," he said promptly. "The shaman puts paint upon her face and signs the soul away to safety so the demons dinna take it." I hesitated, my instincts to do something, at war with my conviction that action would be futile. Had I any right to deprive this man of peace in his dying, worse, to alarm him into fear that his soul would be lost by my interference? Ian hadn't waited for the results of my dithering. He stooped and scraped up a small clot of earth, spat in it, and stirred it into mud. Without comment, he dipped his forefinger into the puddle and drew a line from my forehead down the bridge of my nose. "Ian!" "Shh!" "Like this, I think." He added 2 lines across each cheekbone, under a rough zigzag down the left side of my jawbone. "That's as near as I remember the proper way of it. I've only seen it the once, and from a distance." "Go to him, Auntie. You will not frighten him. He's accustomed to, you know." All painted up. Young Ian explains she mustn't say his name for the fear of calling demons. She sings Tantrum Ergo, since he thinks that's the style of music for such an occasion. Tantum ergo sacramentum veneremur cernui et antiquum documentum novo cedat ritui praestet fides supplementum sensuum defectu genitori genitoque laos et jubilatio salus honor virtus quoque sit et benedictio procedenti ab utroque comparsit laudatio. Amen. Those are the words that she sings, and I put a link for a beautiful choir video, and it has the English translation close captioned within it. I just love the blend of religions and traditions here to soothe the dying man. Claire has never witnessed a death such as this before. He waited until she finished singing the song, turned his head toward the door, and simply left his body. There was no sound, no jerk, nothing, except he was gone. I'm amazed by the depth of cultural sensitivity because of when this book was written and for the time period it's written about. I'm really amazed and impressed. Jamie, Claire, and young Ian are trying to decide what to do with the body. Since he was diseased, and Claire cannot remember how long others could become infected from his body or clothing, they cannot take him wrapped to his village. The man was from a northern village, so the people could hear of the burial and think they killed him and buried him to cover it up. They decide to put him in a cave until they can get advice from Nakagnawito at Anauka. Willie returns from picking strawberries, explaining his papa has taken ill. Lord John likely picked up the illness in an inn or Cross Creek where a measles outbreak occurred. Claire examines John and tells Jamie to keep Willie away. Claire forms a plan. Wait a day or two to see if either boy comes down with symptoms. If not, Jamie will take Willie with him to see Nakagnawito, while young Ian stays behind to help Claire. Jamie agrees to the plan, but is worried. Claire assures him if the boy hasn't remembered him yet, he won't. Her only request is for him to get the pig out of the pantry before he goes. Oh, the saga of the white sow. Thankfully, Claire, Jamie, and young Ian are taking cultural need into account before simply doing what they want to with the dead body. This also shows how ahead of time Jamie and Ian have become because of their dealings with another culture of people. Remember, Jamie used to think they were savages? So I love this. And I also love the fact that Claire, being schooled in allopathic medicine, also known as Western medicine, is willing to utilize different systems of medicine to treat patients. Now, we've seen her do surgery, so she'll still use the allopathic methods whenever she can and when necessary, but she will do herbs, and she will do other mind-body treatments, like singing for this man. That's part of it. That made him feel better. That made him accept her, even though he didn't understand. It appeared solemn and what he was used to. So she treats in a much more holistic way than only relying on her Western medical training. So I give props to Diana Gabaldon for having Claire be accepting. And it's interesting because this is one of those spots where, like Claire says, she's not very religious, but she prays and she does religious ritual and she'll follow other people's religious needs and she does that contemplative time. And just because she's a surgeon and she sees herself that way, I often wonder if she realizes how many different methods that she's using, how many different systems that she partakes in and puts into her practice, even though she sees herself as a surgeon. Sometimes I don't think she sees herself very clearly at all, but do any of us really? Chapter 27, Trout Fishing in America. Jamie has several things to complain about before starting the journey to Anauka with William. It's raining. He doesn't want to leave Claire. He's worried for John. William, 9th Earl of Ellesmere, just hit him. Now then, he said, letting go. The boy staggered and sat down suddenly as he lost his balance. He glared down at the lad, sitting in the mud by the penfold. I ken well enough what you said, but what I said is that you're coming with me. I've told you why, and that's all about it. I am not leaving, the boy repeated. You can't make me. He got to his feet, jaw clenched, and turned back toward the cabin. Jamie snaked out an arm, grabbed the lad's collar, and hauled him back. Seeing the boy draw back his foot for a kick, he closed his fist and punched the boy neatly in the pit of his stomach. William's eyes bulged and even doubled over, holding his middle. Don't kick, Jamie said mildly. It's ill-mannered. And as for making you, of course I can. It's very loyal of you to want to stay by your stepfather, Jamie went on, wiping the water out of his own face, but you cannot help him, and you may do yourself damage by staying, so you're not. William certainly has the Fraser stubbornness. After nearly having to tie William's feet into the stirrups, they were on their way. Riding in silence until they stopped to eat, the boy remained sullen in his defeat. The boy is still without signs of measles, thankfully. William finally asks Jamie his version of, "Are we there yet?" Jamie knows he needs to take it slower than usual because Claire instructed him to keep the boy away for a minimum of 6 days. Being on horse afforded them to carry extras along, including a gift for the Indians. William finally breaks the silence, asking if the Indians are friendly. Jamie assures him they are. They are nicer than English people. Jamie tells stories and points out the animal markings as they pass. Jamie prefers this to the quiet. He can't help himself wondering what would happen if John died. He'd probably never see the boy again. John and Claire are the only two people who know the truth about William's paternity, even if William's grandmother suspects. He says a prayer to St. Bride for John. The forest smells of fresh leaves and leaf mold. Jamie points out a tree with bare slashes on the trunk, and his internal dialogue continues. If John dies, this is it. He will never see or hear from William again, and he'll lose his closest friend on top of it. They continue to ride and come out into a valley. William is gobsmacked at what he sees. Willie gave a small exclamation of surprised delight and sat up straight in his saddle. Against a backdrop of rain-docked clouds, a rainbow arced from the slope of a distant mountain, falling into a perfect shimmer of light to the floor of the valley far below. "Oh, it's glorious," Willie said. He turned a wide smile on Jamie, their differences forgotten. "Have you ever seen such a thing before, sir?" "Never," said Jamie, smiling back. It occurred to him, with a small shock, that these days in the wilderness might conceivably be the last he would see or hear of William. He hoped that he wouldn't have to hit the boy again. Of course, that's where his head goes. I hope we can continue to get along so I don't have to punch you. I can imagine the mostly untouched land with a brilliant rainbow. Do you suppose Diana Gabaldon put a rainbow here as a sign of Lord John's impending survival, or that Jamie will see William after this visit? Rainbows hold significance to Catholics and Protestants. I posted a link on several different thoughts on a Catholic website. Jamie awakens from light sleep to the sound of William crying. Jamie could tell the boy is trying to conceal it. But Jamie worries something serious could be wrong. Jamie asks after his wellness and asks if his belly is griping. William calms and says that's the problem. It's lovely for Jamie to give him an out and accept help without bruising his pride from being overheard. He gives an infusion blend that Claire sent with him. He wonders how she knew would be needed. He decides he gave up long ago in questioning her ways of tending to heart and body. Good man, Jamie. She just knows things. Go with it. The thought of Claire grips him, and he has a moment of immense gratitude for her. How must she feel, seeing William in the flesh, to know he's been in bed with another woman? She flipped out when she learned of Leary, but not Geneva. What's the difference, he wonders. Maybe it's because Geneva is dead? OMG, Jamie. Dear Jamie, Leary ill-wished Claire, tried to have her killed, and had an unhealthy obsession with you. Geneva was a conniving young sexual aggressor who took advantage of her position, a.k.a. sexually assaulted you. Can you not see the difference? As for the boy, it makes her pang for Brianna, and you not knowing her. Please put yourself in her position just a moment. Thanks. And P.S. Heck, you are jealous of Frank and the time she spent with him. and him raising Brianna. And you sent her back to him. Okay, I'll stop yelling for just a minute at you. Sometimes he's such a man, and she can't think possibly of what she could be thinking or feeling. Jamie's stream of consciousness, thoughts moves back to William. William's mothers, Step and Real, are both dead. Now his father is gravely ill. No wonder the boy is upset. The measles killed the Indian just days before. The boy is in a state of grief. William loved John and couldn't bear to lose him. Love is what caused his stubbornness. Love is what caused his tears in the darkness. This thought of the love of a father stabs Jamie with a small bit of jealousy. An unaccustomed weed of jealousy sprang up in Jamie's heart, stinging like nettles. He stamped firmly on it. He was fortunate indeed to know that his son enjoyed a loving relationship with his stepfather. There, that was the weed stamped out. The stamping, though, seemed to have left a small, bruised spot on his heart. He could feel it when he breathed. The water is boiling and the brew is steeping. Claire warned Jamie not to drink it because of the lavender in it. Remember Blackjack used lavender-scented oil when raping Jamie? He has a very negative reaction to it, and it makes him ill. The good news is it doesn't bother Jamie if he knows the lavender is in something. Only when he's caught off guard does it cause problems. William is feeling better, but the signs of grief are still upon him. He tells William Claire is a fine healer. "That will ease you," he said, nodding at the cup. "My wife made it. She's a very fine healer." "Is she?" The boy took a deep, trembling breath of the steam and touched a cautious tongue to the hot liquid. "I saw her do things with the Indian who died." The accusation was very clear. She'd done things and the man had died anyway. "She had mud on her face and she sang to him. I think she was singing a papist song. It was in Latin and it had to do something with sacraments." "Indeed?" Jamie suppressed his own astonishment at this description. "Aye, well, perhaps she meant only to give the man a bit of comfort if she saw she couldna save him. The Indians are much more sensible of the effects of measles, you ken. An infection that will kill one of them would not cause a white man to blink twice. I've had the measles myself as a wee lad and took no harm from it at all." He smiled and stretched, demonstrating his evident health. William feels better about Claire caring for his father. He is feeling overall better as well, thinking the apples didn't cause the problem after all. Jamie successfully distracted him. Jamie brings up fishing for their dinner the next day. William is ecstatic. Jamie talks about fishing in England and instantly regrets it. He'd taken William fishing when he was only 5. Is he trying to get the boy to remember? William thinks this place is nothing like England and is excited. He'll miss only a few things about not living there anymore. "I don't think so," he said with a decided shake of his head. "I miss Grandmama sometimes and my horses, but nothing else. It was all tutors and dancing lessons and Latin and Greek. Ugh." He wrinkled his nose, and Jamie laughed. "You did not care for dancing, then?" "No, you have to do it with girls." He shot Jamie a look under his fine dark brows. "Do you care for music, Mr. Fraser?" "No," Jamie said, smiling. "I like the girls fine, though." The girls were going to like this wee laddie just fine, too, he thought, covertly noting the youngster's breadth of shoulder and long shanks, and the long, dark lashes that hid his bonny blue eyes. William says Claire is very pretty. Sweet boy. The infusion is doing its calming on William. Jamie asks if the boy would rather sleep close to him for warmth. William jumped on the offer and fell asleep snuggled next to Jamie. At the time, status wouldn't allow Jamie to ask William into his arms, but for warmth, men were socially allowed to sleep near each other. The next day, we find Jamie and William making lures, or flies, for the fishing poles. Jamie says hungry fish matter most when trying to catch them. It's the early evening and the pond is waking up. Jamie says it's fishing time. Jamie shows William how to cast and waits for a fish to bite. Jamie gets a bite the first try. "You've got one! You've got one!" He could hear Willie dancing on the bank behind him with excitement, but had no attention to spare for anything save the fish. He had no reel, only the twig that held his spare line. He pulled the tip of the rod far back, let it fall forward, and gathered in the loose line with a snatch of the hand. Once more, line in, and then a desperate rush that took out all the line gained and more. The fish got away this time, but they kept at it. William loses his pole and uses Jamie's. He also gets an education on how to do the small steps it takes to get a fish. In the process of casting, we learned William is left-handed like Jamie. "Aye, but I'm cack-handed, my lord. Most men would cast with the right." "Cack-handed?" Willie's mouth curved up again. "I find my left hand more convenient to most purposes than is the right, my lord." "That's what I thought it meant. I'm the same. My mother said it wasn't proper and that I must learn to use the other, as a gentleman ought, but Papa said no. It made them let me write with my left hand. He said it didn't matter so much if I should look awkward with a quill. When it came to fighting with a sword, I should be at an advantage." Oh, Lord John, thinking ahead. They get on to the subject that John was a soldier who fought in the Scottish Rising. William stops himself seeing Jamie's tartan. Jamie tells William that is where he and John met. I know. That's where I met him first. He was a very gallant soldier indeed. And right about the hands as well. Have you begun your schooling with the sword, then? William will get a full education in sword fighting when he's a bit bigger. Casting with his left hand, William catches a fish. By the time the sun is setting, they have a nice string of fish for dinner. And William thinks the fish is delicious. The boy is naked under the blanket while his clothes dry. Jamie is still in a wet shirt trying to get warmed by the fire. He stood close to the edge of the fire and let the heated air rise up under his shirt. The warmth of it ran up his thighs and touched his chest and belly, comforting as Claire's hands on the chilly flesh between his legs. Jamie watches William without seeming to look at him. Gazing upon the thin, wiry, handsome boy, Jamie takes in the moment and forges a memory that would last his whole life. He has no idea why a particular moment imprints this way over any other. The phenomenon reminds him of the photographs Claire showed him. He has thoughts like this of his father, Claire, Jenny, and Ian. Small moments clipped out of time and perfectly preserved by some odd alchemy of memory, fixed in his mind like an insect in amber. And now he had another. For so long as he lived, he could recall this moment. He could feel the cold wind on his face and the crackling feel of the hair on his thighs, half singed by the fire. He could smell the rich odor of trout fried in cornmeal and feel the tiny prick of swallowed bone, hair thin in his throat. He could hear the dark quiet of the forest behind and the soft rush of the streams nearby, and forever now he would remember the firelight golden on the sweet bold face of his son. Nature speaks to him like it does Claire. There's an awareness of the life surrounding him. And Jamie thanks the Lord for this moment. Dio gratias. And it startles William. Telling William it's bedtime, Jamie is surprised at a physical behavior he does that is exactly like Jamie. Jamie felt a stab of alarm. He recognized the gesture only too well as one of his. In fact, he had been just about to do precisely the same thing, and it was with an effort that he kept his hand still. He swallowed the heart that had risen into his throat and reached for his sporran. No, surely the lad would never think a boy of that age paid little attention, paid little heed to anything his elders said or did, let alone thought to look at them closely. But Jamie saw the look on Claire's face, knowing the resemblance was there. And sometimes it's physical mannerisms more than actual physicality that give it away. My sister and I look very little alike, but if you saw both of us speaking to somebody in person, you would know we were sisters. Even though we have different coloring, different hair, I'm taller, we still make the same facial expressions. We speak in the same manner and tone. Yes. It's pretty amazing and strange. To distract his hands, Jamie decides to make more flies for the breakfast fishing in the morning. William comes over to him and helps without being asked. But growing tired, William asks Jamie questions about the Indians. Jamie assures him there's never been a scalping in the village, though. And like the Highlanders, the Indians don't take kindly to someone harming one of their own. William starts to comment on Scottish people. Grandmama says the Scots breed, like rabbits. Scottish families are sometimes large, eh? We think children, blessin'. William wants to know if Jamie has many children. When Jamie says no, William wonders if he had children, but they died of an illness. Jamie explains his daughter is living in Boston, all grown up. Oh, that's all? No. I have a son, too. A bonny lad, and I love him weel, though he's away from home just now. Sniff, sniff, sniff. Oh, it's so cute. Though I still don't believe William wouldn't recognize Jamie, or at least believe he was familiar at this point. Regardless, I love the dynamic here. Poor Jamie must have the incredible restraint to manage not grabbing the boy and snuggling him up. He's bonding with him and teaching him something. It's the best he can do given the situation. He's also helping William feel less stressed about John and the other grievances he has. I wonder how Claire is faring with John. I can only imagine their conversations while Jamie and William are away. Next week, we are doing chapters 28 and 29, and I'm doing a bit of a poll. Would you rather I not do any accents at all? Do you like them well enough and would like me to keep doing them, as I think I'm getting better over time? Or would you rather me simply just say what character is speaking and just speak in my normal voice? I really appreciate the feedback. Contact at adramofOutlander.com or the phone line 719-425-9444. And I appreciate how we get to see not only Claire's insecurities, but we get to see some of Jamie's as well. Because he's worried he'll never see this boy again. And even though he was fine making the commitment to not really know William and for John to raise him as his stepfather, it still stings a bit. The idea that he may never get to see him again, and he doesn't have Brianna. Jamie is a man who's meant to have a large family. And I'm thankful as the books play out, like he's adopted Fergus, right? And he has his stepdaughters, and they're going to be grandchildren, so his family is starting to grow. But it's so much smaller than I imagined that he would have. So where can you find A Dram of Outlander? Well, on Facebook, there's the big page, A Dram of Outlander, and there's also the group. I encourage you to join the group. You have to answer a few questions to make sure you're not a bot. So please do that. And it's also under A Dram of Outlander. On Twitter and Instagram, it's Dram of Outlander without the A in the front. That's how I had to do it. And of course, the website is adramofoutlander.com. So how do you support the podcast? If you like to listen, share it with other people. When I post the link to it, retweet it, share it, show it to others. Connect in with others in the A Dram of Outlander community on Facebook or Twitter. If you use the hashtag ADOO, whether or not you tweet me, I will still find it and be able to respond to you. But connect and talk and explore. And the Dram of Outlander group on Facebook is really for you, by you. You guys get to talk to each other and ask questions and post other things outside of Outlander as well. It's a nice place to be, and you all are very smart. And thank you for having little need for me to moderate you. I so appreciate that. I can't tell you. You're all grown adults just like me, and I really don't like having to moderate adults. The other way that you can support the podcast is financially. You can go to patreon.com/adramofoutlander and offer as little as $1 a month. Every penny counts. Trust me. I want to be able to build myself a recording box that is not a plug and play every week where I have to set it up and take it down. I want to build an actual real box, and I need some support in order to do that. There is going to be a giveaway coming up, so be on the lookout on social media for that. I'm putting it together as we speak. It's a beautiful set of earrings and necklace that have dragonflies on them. You're going to love it, and so watch out for it. And the other thing I was going to talk to you about before we close the podcast was about the miasma theory. The miasma theory came before germ theory, and it was thought that diseases were caused by the presence in the air of a miasma, or a poisonous vapor, in which suspended particles of decaying matter that cause foul smells would make us sick. The theory originated in the Middle Ages and endured for several centuries. The killer disease, like malaria, is so named from the Italian mala, bad, and aria, air. In the 19th century England, the miasma theory made sense to the sanitary reforms. Rapid industrialization and urbanization had created many poor, filthy, and foul-smelling city neighborhoods that tended to be focal points of disease and epidemic. By improving the housing, sanitation, and general cleanliness of these areas, levels of disease were seen to fall, an observation that lent weight to the theory. But by the middle of the 1800s, germ theory replaced miasma theory. So, there you go. And the other thing I wanted to point out was, why did the American Indian die from the measles? Well, the likelihood is that he had a secondary infection, and he may not have been able to combat it as well. So the most common complications of measles are ear infections in children and diarrhea, but it's only less than 10% of people with measles will get that. Severe complications can include pneumonia and encephalitis. Encephalitis is swelling of the brain. And 1 or 2 children will die from measles out of 1,000 who contract the disease. So most people don't die from it. And it's not very common for the severe complications. But pneumonia is likely what the Indian died from. And all Claire could do was palliative care. She could just comfort him and put her mentholated grease on him. But he probably needed oxygen and antibiotics. And even if she was able to make her herbals of antibiotics using garlic and some other things, it probably wouldn't have been enough to save the man's life. He was so ill. And people do die from pneumonia all the time. So it was likely a secondary measles-related complication that killed him. It's not the disease itself. So there you have it. I have an email to read from our weekly email contributor, Meredith. And she says, for me, these next chapters imply so much unexplored depth. First, let's talk about Jamie and John. They now both have the Dunsany sisters' deaths on their heads. It was implied in Voyager that Geneva's elderly husband was impotent, though we really don't know. So the possibility of dying in childbirth didn't even exist with him. The sexual encounter was her doing, but her death was still because of Jamie. No, I would disagree. It was because she had a serious hemorrhage that was uncontrolled after the doctor left. And there were herbs and other things to stop hemorrhage them. But I don't know if the doctor would have used them like somebody, like a healer or a midwife of the time would. John said that his assignment as governor was over, but that he wanted to stay anyway and sent for his wife and child. Had he just moved back to England, Isabel, too, would be alive. So both of these girls were killed unintentionally by their husbands. Okay, I don't have to be in agreement. I'm just going to keep reading. What do you think, everybody else? So sad, isn't it? One thing I wished had been addressed in the chapters is whether or not Isabel ever caught onto her husband's preferences. She was barely given an introduction in the books, but in the show they showed her to be a kind young woman who loved John. I always feel sorry for her for falling for a man who married her, mostly because of her inherited child. Can you imagine her anger if she'd ever found out the truth? Well, we do find out, and I'm pretty sure it's in one of the Lord John books. It could be The Scottish Prisoner. I'd have to go back and look. And yes, I know I did a read-along, but I can't remember every detail. That's why I have good notes. That we learned that Lord John, before considering marrying her, went to brothels in England to be sure that he could adequately have sex with a woman and please a woman in the process. So they didn't spend that much time together, obviously, but John did know what he was doing, and he knew his way around a woman's body, even if he didn't desire a woman's body. And yes, he could indeed have sex with her. So there you go. I don't think she knew. Now let's address John and Claire. Yes, Claire is jealous, but I can't really blame her. After all, of what they have endured with both Leary and Blackjack interfering with their relationship, she still has trouble believing that Lord John is really as gracious a loser as he is. I like the way you put that. He is a gracious loser. She's still waiting for the other shoe to drop. The other part of it has to do with William. Despite Geneva's role in William's creation, he is really John and Jamie's love child. because if John hadn't fallen for Jamie, there's a good chance he wouldn't have ended up in England instead of the colonies when Ardsmuir was shut down. So John is just as responsible for his existence as either Geneva or Jamie. No wonder he married Isabel, because he made her into a mother. On top of that, Claire missed out on all the firsts of parenthood alongside Jamie. They weren't together when Brianna was growing up. On the other hand, John visited Jamie and William every 3 months. They rode horses and fished together. They both watched him grow up for some time. William probably also loved them both, so they were in some way a family in a way that Jamie, Claire, and Brianna never were. That is a really good point, Meredith. I hadn't quite thought of it that way. Now let's address William. I think his not remembering Jamie could be read as a plot device, as you said, but it could also be read as willful repression. William did think of Jamie Alex as his father figure, and then he abandoned him. At least that's the way Willie saw it, and as he grows up, he probably recalled how often he threw a tantrum. Kids always blame themselves for their parents' departure. He probably thinks that Jamie wouldn't have left or at least wrote letters later if he'd been nicer. So I think he blocked out a lot of his memories of Jamie. Interesting. All I can say is that if William were to learn of a secret father and all the secrets his other father has, there's no way he knows Lord John is a homosexual. So there is very little that William will grow up knowing about his family. Heaven help him if he ever finds out everything. Where's Freud when you need him? Sincerely, Meredith of Everett, Washington. Wow, great insight, Meredith. I hadn't even thought of that. It could be intentional repression, except Willie still carries the crucifix that Jamie gave him. He carries it his whole life. And I know Jamie gave him the snake in the TV show, which I don't even know how that is going to translate into William carrying it with him into adulthood. I got this snake in my pocket. It's ridiculous. It's like the paperweight dragonfly in amber Claire gives Jamie as she's going through the stones. It just is dumb. I don't even know how that sounded good in the writer's room. Anywho, thank you, Meredith. I always love your observations. What do you guys think? I always want your feedback, your questions, your comments. Send them my way. And if you email to contact@adramavoutlander.com, or if you leave a voicemail at 719-425-9444, they can make it on the show. So I thank you so much for listening, and be on the lookout for the giveaway. And until next time, Slán je va.